and welcome back to another Positive Images Festival Poetry Workshop with me, Emily. It's lovely to see you again, and thank you for supporting these sessions and watching them. Let me tell you what we've got coming up because it is exciting, and if you like what you see then please press that red subscribe button down the bottom. Okay, so we are going to consider what is a mooncalf and how can you put it into a poem. What musical instrument sounds like a tree without a heart? And right at the end, I'm going to give you a reminder about the annual Positive Images Festival poetry competition that is open every year in October for the whole of October. So at the moment, I'm looking at the 2021. So, activity 1, let's get straight into it. There are some really beautiful archaic words. Archaic is basically, obviously you probably know it means old. There's Old English, which is the one that sort of Chaucer wrote in that we find quite hard to read, and sort of between the 1300s, you're getting a little history lesson here and it's sketchy so don't quote me, but between sort of the 1300s and the 1500s there was something called the vowel reformation, which meant that in England we started changing how we pronounced a lot of sounds, especially with the vowels. So during that time, if we look back on it, that's Old English, and that's what we would find really hard to make any sense out of. Archaic English, you're looking at more like your Shakespeare, where you can certainly get the drift of it, but you might want to read the synopsis before you go and see a play. So some of those words we recognise and make sense of, and some of them we don't use anymore, but we can definitely read them and they use the same sounds that we're using now. So that's just the difference between Old English and archaic, and a very basic version at that. So I thought I would give us a few archaic words to spark off a poem. Now previously I've done this activity with my group in Coventry, and we did it where I didn't tell them what the words meant and they just had to slip them in to the poem and have a guess at what that word might mean and form a poem from it. This time I am going to tell you what they mean, and let's see if we can bring some of these beautiful words back. So I'm going to give you some, and we'll just play a little game first, little word quiz. I'm going to tell you some words, then you can pause the video or play along at home and see if you know what they mean. Then I will put the definitions up for you. So, and I hope I'm pronouncing these right. I'm going to guess that I am, but we'll see. So here's your word list. Sweven, kind of spelled like seven but with a W. Kemper with a C, Kemper. Clue. Mooncalf and attercop. Okay, and hopefully by the magic of video editing they have appeared on your screen. So there's the words. You are going to choose, when you know what they mean, one of them and see if you can work it into a poem. If you don't fancy any of these words, then there are plenty of either archaic word lists, particularly noun lists are a good one, or archaic word generators on the internet that you can use to find your own. Or if you've got a particular favourite word from something of Shakespeare or something, then feel free to use that. But here's the ones I'm going to give you as a starter. Okay, I'm now going to put up what the definitions of them are. So sweven is a vision or a dream. I think I missed out welkin. That's the sky or the vault of heaven. I thought that was a beautiful expression. Kemper is a warrior. Clue is a ball of thread, spelt like with the EW. A mooncalf is a foolish person. And attercop was a spider. I like the spider one because you can imagine, like, it sort of felt like the sound to me that it makes when it runs, like attercop. It kind of, I thought there was a poeticness and onomatopoeic sense to that. But I love the word mooncalf. I definitely want to bring that back. It seemed almost too beautiful to mean a foolish person, but there we are. So, take one of these archaic words, or one of your own, and see if you can fit it into a poem. If you're looking for a suggestion of time, then give yourself 15 minutes. And if you want to do a free write, that means you're not going back and editing, you just sit for those 15 minutes and you just write and see what comes out as a result of that word. Then that can be a really good way of unblocking your mind if you're not sure what to do, is to just go for it and write. Have fun, and I will see you in the next activity. Welcome back to activity 2. So we are going to have a look at a poem or poetry inspired by sounds, because sounds are everywhere. No room is completely quiet. You know, I always quote them, but in my room, in fact, at 1:45 this morning in my room there was a loud thump because one of the guinea pigs had ran into the wall. I had the hamster going around on the wheel, the others were squeaking, I'd got my window open and I could hear the wind. So there was a lot going on even when no one else was awake for me in this room. And it'll be the same wherever you are. Even if you think you're in quiet, maybe there's a hum of a light or a fridge or a TV. You might be able to hear things like traffic in the background, or you know, even the house just creaking as it you know, expands in the heat, or at night, you know, sometimes the stairs creak even when there's no one on them. So we are completely surrounded by sounds, even in a time like this when we're spending maybe more time at home than normal. So this poem is called Violin and is by Sheila Black. That's available on Google. All of the poems that I mention here you can find on the internet, so there's no copyright issues. So if you want to, then have a Google of Violin by Sheila Black. Let me tell you a little bit about her first, because I know that you all enjoy the mini bios. So Sheila Black has written over 40 books, including 4 poetry collections. Among many other accolades, she was the winner of the prestigious 2012 Witter Bynner Fellowship. She is a passionate advocate of disability poetics and is the co-editor of the landmark anthology Beauty is a Verb, the New Poetry of Disability. So she's really, really interesting and a great writer, so do look her up. And this one is called Violin. You must use the body, it curves, it hollows the spring of the sound, which brings back what is absent, what has been and is now gone, fading, catgut, fret, the busy machinery of longing, which takes its strength from the presence of absence, the body's darkness, the wood carved out, thinned and made to flex. There is a pain at the source of it, so easily broken, this tree without a heart. The sap dried to amber patina. Only in the sound can you hear it move, the veins in the blood of the body that is no more. The bow pulled along the taut strings, a pitch that is all but unbearable. That might be one you want to go back and listen to or look up again, because for me I wanted to read it a good 3 times before I was fully getting you know, those images, because it is so packed with beautiful words and ideas. So first thing to note in this poem is the sense of movement, although like the key part of it for me anyway was the sound that the violin creates, like this piece of dead tree basically, and it creates this sound that, you know, she says you can hear it move, it pulls the taut strings, a pitch that is all but unbearable. It was one of those goosebump ones for me. But there's movement in it, you know, it doesn't just stand still, it's you know, really 3-dimensional, and she does that because it's about sound, but she brings it to life with the other senses. So you've got a really good description of what it looks like, you know, even the feeling and emotion that's put into it. So easily broken, a tree without a heart, dried sap, like amber patina, really beautiful, and it feels really emotional. And so you've got that, you know, you really get a sense of it, and then actually almost in the end is what sound it makes. So here's your challenge. See if you can write a poem inspired by something you can hear. It might be right now in your room, or it might be when you go out for, you know, for your daily walk. Anything that that is a sound that is special to you, or that maybe isn't special at all, that is completely ordinary, because poetry is about writing about the ordinary and making it poetic. And when you write about that sound, you might want to start off just writing about the sound, but then see if you can do what Black did with this poem and really bring it to life by using that emotive language, those images. She really stuck to nature images there, so maybe stick to a certain particular type of imagery and explore it. And have fun, because that's the main reason we write, isn't it? It's because we enjoy it. So I will see you back in the next activity, and I'll also have an amazing best practice poetry quote for you. I think it's amazing anyway. You can judge that in the next part of the video. Okay, bye. Hello and welcome back to the final part of the video. I realised I did my really goofy bye that my brother always mocks me for, and several of my friends, and it's too late because I'm not re-recording the whole of that last section because I waved goodbye stupidly. So there we are. As promised though, I have got a best practice quote. And I always pick people with names that I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce. There will be at least one every session, and this is my one for this session. So I'm going to go with André Gide, that's G-I-D-E. People who speak more languages than I do, or different languages, will be able to tell me whether that is correct or not. But André Gide was a French author and winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, and that was in 1947. His career ranged from its beginnings in the symbolist movement to the advent of anti-colonialism between the two world wars. And he was the author of more than 50 books. So really interesting. If you want to go and look up the symbolist movement or anti-colonialism, it's sort of anti-colonialism was sort of like post-colonialism, but it came first. So then there's two little genres for you to explore as well. But let's importantly get on to his quote. So he said, "Therefore is a word the poet must not know. Therefore is a word the poet must not know." And I think, to me, what he's saying with this is don't over-explain ideas in your poem. You're not trying to declare a big universal truth every time. Trust that your reader understands and will draw their own conclusions from what you're saying. There doesn't need to be that big reveal of, here's the moral of my poem every time. Sometimes, because I found that I do this, is that when I'm writing, I feel I need to write my way into the poem. So I almost like scene set, and then I write my way back out of it. And quite often, if I'm going to cut chunks out of a poem, it will be the very beginning and the very end. And sometimes I can take whole stanzas off because I've over-explained. The reader isn't stupid. They understood what I was saying, and they didn't need me to, having used beautiful imagery, to then fully explain it in a telling way at the end of the poem. So we don't need to use things like therefore. I mean, I bet there's loads of poems with therefore in, but you don't need to explain the sort of moral of your story each time. So have a go, have a look at your own when you're editing, and maybe see if that is a useful tip for you as well, because when someone told me what I was doing, it really helped me with my writing. And now on to the final activity for this month. So this is a poem called September Tomatoes, and it's by Karina Borowicz. And again, if you want to look her up, that would be perfect. Karina Borowicz, that's Borowicz, spent 5 years living and teaching in Russia and Lithuania. And besides her own poetry, she published translations and co-translations from the Russian and French that she wrote in. She now lives with her family in Massachusetts in America, and her book Rosetta has just won the Ex Offidia Poetry Prize, and it's going to be available next month. So if you're watching this in the future, it's available and you can read it. So here's the poem for you. September Tomatoes. The whiskey stink of rot has settled in the garden, and a burst of fruit flies rises when I touch the dying tomato plants. Still, the claws of tiny yellow blossoms flail in the air as I pull the vines up by the roots and toss them in the compost. It feels cruel. Something in me isn't ready to let go of summer so easily, to destroy what I've carefully cultivated all these months. those pale flowers might still have time to fruit. My great-grandmother sang with the girls of her village, and they pulled the flax, songs so old and so tied to the season that the very sound seemed to turn the weather. And she certainly doesn't over-explain there, because it just leaves us with that memory. I really like the way this poem links the past and the present. So there's no explicit statement that does list those two ideas. First there's, we'll say her, but it's, the narrator, it's not always the poet. So you've got the narrator pulling up the tomatoes in what feels to me very much the present day. And then you go way back to the great-grandmother singing with the other girls in the village. And the only thing that ties them together is the fact that the poet has deliberately placed those two images right next to each other in the poem in stanzas. So we're shown really that certain rituals are continued through time, that humans probably always have and will continue to mark the changing of the seasons with certain patterns, celebrations, rituals. It could be the changing of the clocks in October and March. It could be all sorts of things, the way we pack away our summer wardrobe and, the winter one comes to the front. And your challenge is to think of your own rituals that take place around this time of year. So it could be something, as I said, as simple as, changing clothes, or changing, like she is, the plants that are in her garden, or even where you choose to do your writing. In the summer, I tend to write outside in the garden. Not so tempting on a windy, cold day like today. It tends to move into my bedroom. So what do you pack away? What do you do when that season changes? And if you want to take this activity one step further, so let that inspire your poem, but if you want to do a next step in the style of Karina, then add in that final stanza and compare this to maybe something that your ancestors would have done. So that is your challenge. The other thing that I really like about this poem, before I do let you go and I'll stop talking, is how I said to you about poetry quite often takes something that's very normal. A lot of us will have grown plants in our time, specifically tomato plants, and it's something we're very familiar with. It's on the surface maybe not that interesting, but she makes it beautiful. And when I read this, I related it to memories of myself. I used to do gardening with my grandparents right up until I was in my early 20s, because they had a beautiful garden. And I remember horrified the first time I grew radishes, that my granddad started making me pull, because I'd sewn them too close together. He was making me pull the ones apart so that the radishes, the ones that were growing well, would have room. He says if you don't take them out, you'll end up with really thin radishes. But I felt like her with her tomato plants, like, oh, but I'm destroying something I've created. And it was a really strange thing that stayed with me, actually, that re-emerged after reading this. So sometimes when you are specific with poetry and talk about the normal, you will find that it is more relatable, because it reminded me of my radishes all those years ago. So have a go at your ritual poem, and I look forward to hopefully hearing some of them and reading some of them in the future. I've got one final little bit to come back to, but for now I will set you off on your writing journey. Probably give yourselves 20 minutes starting from now. Okay, last bit, just a bit of housekeeping, but interesting housekeeping, so don't switch off. It is the Positive Images annual poetry competition again this month, October. In fact it's open now, you can start sending your entries. It closes on the 31st of October and the theme is neighbours. So the information is now on the website, positiveimagesfestival.co.uk. It is open to everyone all over the world, as long as you're over 16 and the work is written in English and it belongs to you. So that's the basic information. We're looking for poems of no more than 40 lines, and your poems need to be emailed to Positive Images Fest, that's Fest, like festival, yahoo.com, along with your full name, your writer name, if that's different to your full name, your address and telephone number so that we can contact you to attend the Zoom launch, to read, and to let you know when the booklets are out if your poem appears in the booklet. So the reading event will be on the 21st of November, and it will be good fun because it always is. We'll just be lacking the samosas this year. You'll have to bring your own, I'm afraid. If you know somebody who is not online, because we really are inclusive and accessible, as possible, then please get in touch with me. Please leave a comment to this, and I'll tell you how you can get hold of me, or go onto the Positive Images website, because there is a postal address there, or you can email us on behalf of somebody and say this person needs to be able to enter but hasn't got a computer, and we will make that happen. Don't worry, we prefer them by email, but if someone hasn't got email, then we totally understand, and that is fine. So thank you so much once again for tuning in. It is so lovely to see you, to be here with you in your home, and also don't forget to check out the We Speak Poetry series, which is another channel, well, it's on my channel, but is another channel on my channel, playlist, that's the word, it's another playlist. Because last time I think I was promoting it to you, it was yet to start, it was but a dream, and it is now here, and I've got 4 amazing poets so far that are part of it, and I've got another 4 for you next month, so I'm very excited. Please subscribe if you can, it means a lot, it makes my life easier and means that the videos get seen by more people, thanks to YouTube. And the next lot of these workshops will be available from Sunday the 25th of October 2020. If you're watching in the future, then you can go straight to it, because we're keeping these up and they'll just be available now for you to enjoy. Have a good month, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, bye!